Welcome back. Let's start with the big global news. Pope Francis issued his toughest condemnation yet of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia today, saying that the unacceptable armed aggression must stop. Speaking to thousands of people in St. Peter's Square for his Sunday blessing, Pope Francis also said that the killing of children and unarmed civilians was barbaric and with no valid strategic reason. All right, we'll see if we can get a little bit of that actual clip for you later. But let's get the latest. Russia launching more attacks on different cities in Ukraine. This has led to many Ukrainians fleeing the country. There are reports that the officials from both countries will resume talks with the aim of trying to agree on terms around a ceasefire. For more, we're joined by SABC Correspondent Giles Gibson, who is in Latvia. Thank you for being with us. Giles, depending on the reports you read, it sounds like there may be some hope on the horizon, some indication from a Russian representative, for example, that there may be an agreement soon. Even the wording that the Russian president has been using of late seems to have changed slightly. It depends who you speak to. What are you hearing?
Well, certainly some very positive noises coming out of both the Ukrainian and the Russian side. We've had a member of the Russian delegation who was involved in those talks, those couple of round of talks that took place in Belarus. He's saying that there has been substantial progress in the negotiations and that documents, not exactly clear what he means by that, could be signed in the coming days. Of course, we heard on Saturday from the Kremlin that there were actually video talks going on between the Ukrainian and Russian delegations who, as I was mentioning, met a couple of times in Belarus earlier on in this invasion. We've also had a presidential advisor on the Ukrainian side, an advisor to the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, posting a video onto his social media feed talking about that Russia is beginning to talk constructively and also saying that there could be some results in a matter of days. So, yeah, both sides making some really positive sounds and positive noises, but at this stage we really don't know what exactly they could be working on, whether some sort of ceasefire could be brokered in the next few days or so.
In the meantime, is the fighting still as aggressive? Is the push towards Kiev that we were talking about yesterday still going on?
Yeah, that's right. It's just Russian forces, according to the latest reports we're getting, are just getting closer and closer to the centre of the Ukrainian capital. There's also been a lot of talk over the last few hours about these airstrikes on a Ukrainian airbase right in the far west of the country. This, not an airbase, a military base. This military base is only about 25 kilometres away from the border with Poland. And of course, this is very, very significant because Poland is a member of NATO. We've actually had some reports coming from people who live just over the border inside Poland that when these airstrikes were coming in, that they were feeling their houses shaking and their windows rattling. So this really a symbolic move from the Russians, striking a military base so close to a NATO member country.
The UN has raised concern again about the humanitarian crisis in countries that share borders with Ukraine. Tell us what's happening there.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we have President Volodymyr Zelensky, who has repeatedly over the course of this invasion been calling for a no-fly zone to be established right across the country. You also have lawmakers in Washington and London and other Western capitals who've been calling for what they're calling limited or target no-fly zones. So the idea behind those would be that you could have humanitarian corridors out of some of these cities, such as Mariupol, that are just getting absolutely hammered by Russian strikes and that people are desperately trying to leave. You could have those protected by these limited fly zones. But at this stage, any sort of no-fly zone over the Ukrainian airspace is just looking really unlikely because we've heard from Jens Stoltenberg, the Secretary General of NATO, time and time again, that they do not want to be in a position where you have NATO planes over the skies of Ukraine, potentially having to engage or even shoot down Russian planes in order to enforce a no-fly zone.
Yeah, some believe that would be an untenable escalation for both sides, potentially the Third World War. What about the neighbouring countries dealing with the influx of migrants, of refugees right now?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, in particular, you're still looking at Poland, which is just taking so many of these migrants leaving Ukraine. There are, according to the latest estimates, well over 2 million people who have decided that, Ukraine is their home, but it's just not safe for them. So they are now really heading for the exits and trying to get into countries such as Poland. But it is not just Poland. I mean, you have really refugees making the crossing out of Ukraine, all these different countries, and you even have the Russians saying that people are heading east as well. So people in those breakaway regions in the east of Ukraine deciding that they should head over into Russia instead. We haven't really had very reliable numbers about the numbers of people who are prepared to do that. But the Russians are using that as a way of sort of justifying this invasion, saying that the people fleeing the violence in eastern Ukraine, that their forces are going in and making that area of eastern Ukraine, those breakaway republics, safer. Of course, the Ukrainians would argue that those areas are a sovereign territory of Ukraine.
All right, thank you very much for that update, SABC correspondent in Latvia, Giles Gibson.